Hello and welcome to our webinar, SpringCM and Conga, slash the time to execute contracts in half, and more. My name is Chris Cook. I'm the Director of Business Development at Conga. I'm responsible for the Conga Alliance Partner Program, and I have the distinct pleasure of working with our Conga partners to find solutions to make our customers even more successful. Conga integrates with many of the apps on the Salesforce App Exchange, and we encourage you to make purchase decisions based on your evaluation of these apps. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Ben Kiker, the CMO at SpringCM and one of our Alliance partners. Ben is going to share some ways our joint customers can spend less time chasing contracts and managing other content and more time generating revenue. A couple housekeeping tidbits. All participants have been muted at this point for the duration of the webcast. We will be doing an open Q&A at the end of the webinar. If you do have questions, please submit those in the questions window, and we'll get to those at the end of the webinar. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Ben Kiker.
Hi, Chris, and thanks for the introduction. By the way, all of what Chris just said about evaluating other options on the App Exchange, not necessary. All you really need to do is pick up some SpringCM on your way home today. So, and Chris, by the way, please feel free to jump in at any point as we go through this. It'll make it much more interesting for the folks on the line. I have to say, though, before we jump in, I am a little jealous, Chris, about one thing at Conga. And for those folks that are on the line who have seen the Conga team in action at various events, know that you all have these custom-designed Aloha shirts that you wear. And I am a huge fan of the Aloha shirt. So while I don't have one of yours, I do have one that I found that I wanted to represent on the call today. So this is one of about 60 of these kinds of shirts that I actually have. So how about that?
That's terrific. And for those of you on the call, if you've been to Dreamforce or been to some other Salesforce events, we started wearing the green. We also have some yellow Hawaiian shirts in the Conga booth, and pretty much across the board, the customers and people at those events like those shirts a lot more than we do, but we certainly are warming up to them. So does this mean this is the new SpringCM wardrobe for Dreamforce?
I don't know that I would expect that, but who knows? We may have a little bit of flair that connects back to the Hawaiian shirt, so stay tuned for that.
Nice.
All right, well, welcome to everyone who has joined us on the call today. I had the opportunity to go through a number of, or look at the registration list, and I know there are a number of folks that I don't recognize as SpringCM customers who are new to SpringCM, so with that, welcome. And what I'd like to do is take a few minutes out of the gate to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do, because I think that will provide a good level set for the discussion we'll then get into, which is about how we work together with Conga. So just to give you the quick overview, when you think about SpringCM, think about content, and we solve content problems like contracts, for example, and other deal-related documents better than anyone. It's out of Salesforce. What we do for contracts, we can do for any kind of content, HR content, customer service content, etc. Just like Conga, with SpringCM, you start, start in Salesforce, stay in Salesforce. Non-Salesforce users access content in the way that works for them, and we have some awesome Salesforce customers. We have about 400 customers total worldwide. About 150 of those are Salesforce customers, including a number of the great names on this slide: Safeway, PDI NicePack, Office Depot, Athena Health, Arcadia. Again, all great examples of joint customers with SpringCM and with Salesforce. And one of the other things that I think is very similar between our organization and Conga is we drive some pretty big, impressive business outcomes for organizations. In fact, I did a webcast a few weeks ago with Leanne Mitchell. Leanne is the Director of Dental Plans for Life and Specialty Ventures, which is actually a joint venture between 4 very large Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. And through the power of SpringCM with the Force.com platform, LSV was able to enter a new market and do some pretty, hit some pretty challenging timelines in the healthcare arena, which, as many of you know, involves a lot of content, a lot of people, a lot of process. In doing that is measured in a matter of months versus years. So some big outcomes that we're working to drive, again, for Salesforce customers. I recently had the pleasure of hopping on a call with Gretchen Gauss. Gretchen is with Biotronic. Biotronic is the 4th largest medical device manufacturer in the world. They focus on implantable medical devices, including pacemakers and heart defibrillators. And they recently deployed SpringCM. And Gretchen was sharing with us some of the benefits and the results that they're seeing and the immediate impact that it's making on her business. And I loved this quote that she shared. In fact, she did it kind of at the end of our call as it was wrapping up. And I said, Gretchen, I need you to go back to the beginning and speak slowly and clearly so I can grab that. So again, one of many great examples of SpringCM customers with Salesforce. Now, one of the reasons why Salesforce customers, when they discover SpringCM, really fall in love with SpringCM is for this very basic fact. Every day, Salesforce users have to leave Salesforce dozens and dozens of times for one big reason: to find, use, work with, and share content. And I've listed on the left-hand side of the slide just a small example set of the different kinds of content that someone has to leave Salesforce to go find, work on, etc. And this content can be PowerPoint presentations or PDF files or Word documents or Excel spreadsheets. So again, this challenge of finding the content is multiplied by the fact that that content is all over the place. And unfortunately, and there are a lot of things that Salesforce does incredibly well, handling content, though, is not one of those things. So unfortunately, there are a lot of places to sort of lose content inside of Salesforce, but oftentimes folks are leaving Salesforce and they're going to consumer class applications, they're going to legacy old school systems. In fact, 80% of the content that sales teams need typically lives outside of Salesforce. And so that's the reason why Salesforce customers call us, is content has become a major bottleneck, and there's way too much back and forth that's required to cross the finish line, and typically a lot of manual process as well.
Hey, Ben, can I jump in real quickly?
Yeah, go for it, please.
Well, this is a great time to bring up to this audience. So many of you have invested so much time and come to us at Conga with a lot of similar issues and problems to solve when you're looking kind of up the chain of being able to generate that content and saying to us, we have spent so much time and so much effort and we've built our processes around capturing and maintaining that information in Salesforce to have Conga generate those documents, whether it be contracts or any manner of documents with Salesforce data, to then say, great, I've got that piece done, but now I still have all that back and forth with, then what do I do with it? So, trying to look at that, and Ben mentioned it great yesterday, said it's the whole life that happens after you initiate that content, after you generate that content, and how to alleviate these same problems. So this really goes hand in hand with the document generation and the Salesforce process to generate those documents in Conga.
You bet, and that's a great point, Chris. In fact, when you and I were prepping for the webcast today, we both were talking about this, the kind of back and forth challenge that exists today. when you think about it, and this is what I share with the prospects, customers that we're working with, is you spent all of this time, energy, and money to move to the cloud, to implement Salesforce, to really help streamline your sales, service, and marketing processes. Yet then your people have to leave Salesforce in order to go the last mile and actually get work done. And so in a way, not in a way, but directly, SpringCM and Conga, I think we both really help people maximize their investment in Salesforce. So the way that we do that, by the way, is by allowing Salesforce customers to establish a private, secure, scalable, robust content cloud. And not only can you put all of your content into that cloud to make it easier to store and share, but you also have the ability to actually put that content to work. And we'll give some examples about that in a moment. You heard a little bit of a teaser of that from Chris. I shared earlier that we do an awesome job embedding SpringCM inside of Salesforce, but you can also access SpringCM from other places as well. All right, so let's go back to that topic, Chris, about stopping the back and forth. And sales enablement, sales effectiveness is sort of an in vogue phrase right now, and a lot of people love to talk about sales enablement. And from my perspective, it really nets down to this: if you can identify a way to stop the back and forth for your sales teams and make it easier for them to start in Salesforce, stay in Salesforce, and get work done, you have inherently made the sales team much more effective and much more efficient. And I want to just take folks through, Chris, a couple of examples of how we do that through two apps that we developed for Salesforce. The first is called the File It app, and the second is called the Get It app. So here's an example of the File It app, and in the interest of time on the call today, because this is a fairly short webcast today, we're not going to do a full product demo, but you can actually visit us at springcm.com to see a more detailed video of both the File It app and the Get It app. And we'd certainly love to jump on the line and go into this in a little bit more detail with you. But within the SpringCM File It app, think of that as the destination for all of your content related to a specific Salesforce page or object. So for example, what we've shown here is the opportunity page. So for an opportunity that you're working on, you've got presentations that you've developed for that opportunity. You've got other content that you've shared with shared with your prospect and that you've also used internally. So this gives you one single location where all of that content is organized for easy browsing and retrieval, but it's not just where all of the content lives, but you also have over 30 different very powerful SpringCM content actions based on your security setting that allow you to do everything from share that content with others inside and outside of the organization, enact workflow around content, and much, much more. So again, a great example of starting in Salesforce and staying in Salesforce. The other app that we announced earlier this year, which I'm personally really excited about, is our Get It app. And our Get It app delivers content based on a field within that Salesforce object. So for example, we're looking at an opportunity that is currently in the qualification stage. And what SpringCM has done is we've actually searched for all the content that has been developed that would help a salesperson quickly advance this opportunity through the qualification stage and on to the next stage. And this is incredibly powerful for, even organizations with maybe 100 or 200 folks in the company, and a modest-sized sales team can literally have hundreds of different pieces of content that have been developed by the marketing organization in order to help progress deals through the pipeline. And this makes it super easy for the sales team to have access to that content because it's delivered automatically to them. The other thing that you could also do is set up a Get It app that focused on delivering the best content, customer-facing content, for that opportunity to share with that prospect. And just like with a File It app, there are over 30 different content actions that are available. So again, your Salesforce users start in Salesforce, stay in Salesforce, and don't need to leave. So before, Chris, we talk a little bit about how our two companies work together, I just want to remind folks, if you have any questions on what I've shared so far about SpringCM, please feel free to submit those to us in the questions box on the GoToWebinar panel, and Chris and I will get through as many of those as we can in the remaining time. So again, hopefully that gives you a great foundation for SpringCM. Let's go ahead and talk about why it really is a perfect fit for SpringCM and Conga. And I would net it out with a couple of statements. First, the easiest way to think about how we work together, and Chris alluded to this before, is we actually start where Conga stops. So you know and love and use Conga today to quickly and easily generate critical documents, but typically most of those documents have a life after the generation of the content. And maybe the document has to be reviewed internally. Maybe it has to be reviewed externally. Maybe the document needs to be archived and retrieved at a later point for some particular business process or other issue. So typically what happens today is your Salesforce users end up babysitting those documents, right? They're babysitting them, they're tracking them, they're using email to send them around, and it's a pretty unwieldy process. So with Conga Composer, your teams quickly and easily generate the documents. With SpringCM, we then pick that up and help eliminate all the babysitting that tends to occur with documents. By the way, SpringCM is super easy to add to Salesforce and also super easy to integrate with Conga Composer as well. And obviously when you think about, and Chris, feel free to chime in here. I mean, I remember a number of these things that we talked about, the kinds of outcomes that both of our companies focus on and deliver are pretty substantial. Everything from lowered sales costs, because you're just able to get things done faster, to mitigating risk. And I always like to say delight customers. I mean, it's no one likes to be the person that has to hear the wrath of a customer because something got dropped from a process perspective, right? So, Chris, anything you want to add on that before we show a couple of examples?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say I wholeheartedly concur that all the investment in time, and Conga customers know this, very, very well, that you're asking your users and you're asking those sales or service or legal users or HR users, whoever that is, to manage that information in Salesforce in one spot. And to break that process and to manually put intervention in that, whether it be at the time you generate a quote and then it goes out in email and you lose track of it, or you generate those contracts. And you mentioned that you've got someone who's a user playing babysitter. I kind of chuckled to myself and thought, now you've got 7 people playing babysitter because it's going all the way through that process that you don't know where the heck it's gone. So, that process, and what I always kind of come back to, and folks on the webinar can probably relate to that we're losing that effectiveness, that we ask those users to be very, very disciplined, and realizing that Salesforce is the cloud tool of record. If it doesn't exist there, it doesn't exist. But then we say, well, yes, that's true, but then you have to go and break this on this end. So giving them not only an efficient way to generate the documents with Conga, but then to be able to manage those after the fact and not break the efficiency. What it leads to, and you've seen it, I'm sure, Ben, and it's one of your selling points too, is adoption and efficiency and accuracy of data and speed and timing all is improved when you've got much fewer manual, people mucking in that process. So, and everyone's invested in this. We all know that,
Yeah.
that piece already. So being able to take it as, the Conga pieces stop at this stage, and then everyone, and prior to even having, a connection and integration and relationship with SpringCM, people said, well, how do I get approvals done, or how do I do red lines, or how can I, manage this and collaborate and share? And this is a great solution to be able to do that dovetails so nicely with what you already know about Conga.
Yeah. One other quick thing I thought of, I mentioned one of our key Salesforce customers, PDI NicePack. Very fascinating company. If you've ever purchased pre-moistened wet wipes at a CVS or Walgreens, whatever, chances are they were made by the NicePack part of PDI NicePack. They're the largest manufacturer of that product in the world. The PDI part of the company actually sells infection prevention products into hospitals and other places where they have to be very careful that new infections and diseases don't break out when people are being treated. And Robert Clements, who is their Director of Salesforce Governance at PDI NicePack, actually came by our booth at Dreamforce last year, Chris. And one of the things that I overheard him share with folks that stopped by the booth is how they really only want to train new people on one tool, and that tool is Salesforce. So to be able to add apps like SpringCM, like Conga, and embed those within Salesforce is super critical from a training and onboarding perspective for our customers, and I'm sure for your customers as well. So this is really just a pretty simple two-step process. Step one is you generate the document in Conga Composer, the way that you know how to do that today. And I've highlighted below that there's a very simple way to then have that document picked up by SpringCM. And the minute that you click on that button, we actually open a new preview pane that shows you that document. So you see the document, but you notice that the document is framed with some pretty important capabilities. So what I first want to do is orientate you to what's on the left-hand side of the pane and the attributes. So one of the key ways that we help solve the back and forth that occurs in Salesforce today is by making sure that all the key documents that have been generated by Conga and through other sources all have attributes assigned to them. And you might know attributes as metadata or tagging. It's basically content about content that, again, can help in the organization of that content, the searching of that content, and the reporting of that content. We can auto-populate these attributes if needed. We can allow folks to modify the attributes or selectively modify attributes. So again, this is super critical because in a team that's generating hundreds, if not thousands of documents a day, you want to make sure that you have consistency around everything from how those documents are named to how they're stored and where they live. But then along the top part of the pane is where you actually see all of the SpringCM content actions that allow you to do a lot of what Chris just talked about, the sending something out for review and approval, for redline. When something comes back, being able to compare two documents to see where the changes were that were made. And then, Chris, one of the things that I want to point out that's a real key capability of SpringCM is the history button, which is in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And we track every action with every piece of content that is inside of SpringCM. So the beautiful thing about that is not only do you have visibility on where the content is, but you also have clear line of sight to who accessed the content or who didn't access that particular content, which can be super efficient as well. So let's go ahead and bring it home and then open it up for questions, because I want to be sensitive to our time today and the commitment we made to keep this to about half an hour. So again, you have the ability to, with SpringCM and Conga, automate and streamline all of the post-document generation activities, the redlining, the review, the approval, the routing, the compare, and more. Just like Conga, you have the ability to start in Salesforce, stay in Salesforce. For folks that may have joined the call a bit late and missed part of my introduction about who SpringCM is, one of the great things about SpringCM is that non-Salesforce users can access content in the way that works for them. For example, via our web app, mobile device, desktop sync, etc. You can eliminate costly errors, cut process times by up to 50% in part, large part, Chris, just because of getting rid of all that back and forth that we've talked about, and most important, the ability to put a smile on everyone's face. So as we move into the Q&A, and I know, Chris, you've got a couple of things to, you're going to be managing that for us. As we move into that, just a few reminders. We invite you to visit us on the App Exchange to learn what the Salesforce community is saying about SpringCM. I put a couple of my most favorite quotes to the right. We will be at the Salesforce One World Tour stops coming up in Washington, Atlanta, Dallas, Anaheim, and Toronto. And we've got a lot of other great webcasts in our archives that we'd love for you to take a listen to at springcm.com. How was that, Chris?
That was terrific. Thanks so much. And Ben, I do have some questions, and I want to get through those. The first one I think is a great one for all the attendees. Is this webinar going to be posted on the Conga website? And yes, it absolutely will be at congamers.com/support. You'll be able to get to it there. And then we'll also email that out to all the registrants once that's been posted. So you'll be able to see it there, but you'll also hear from us and be able to get to that archived webinar as well. So let me hop into a couple questions. Ben, just from my own standpoint too, and it was a question that came up, what's the best way for people to try SpringCM? All of our Conga customers have gone through installing Conga Composer at some point, working to get that together. Do you guys offer a free trial, and can you guys assist them getting the SpringCM pieces set up in their Salesforce instance?
Yep, we do, and it's probably fairly similar to how it works with Conga. Visit us on the App Exchange. You have the ability to install a free trial version directly into your sandbox and begin playing with it. We will definitely follow up with you the moment you do that. Questions, comments, we can help you through it so that you can very quickly assess if this is the right fit for you.
Super. Okay. In the demo, and knowing that it was relatively short and to the point, you really mentioned and kind of showed the whole notion around contracts, and even though early on we talked about any kind of documents, one of the major benefits to both our products is it doesn't matter what document it is that you're generating and managing. So Conga can generate any number of documents using Salesforce data. What other types of documents are people utilizing SpringCM for besides those kind of contract documents?
Yeah, great question, and thanks for letting me double click on that for a little bit. I would say that the reason why we talk about contracts is a lot of Salesforce customers are working to tackle the contract problem. By the way, just know that when we talk about contracts, we mean any kind of deal-related documents. So even non-disclosure agreements, Chris, that are involved early on in the sales cycle, any kind of deal-related document we can work on. But we have customers that also use us for non-sales related documents. So, for example, we have a lot of folks that use us in HR. So documents that are related to employee onboarding. Some organizations use Salesforce to manage the recruiting process. So a candidate is akin to an opportunity. There's content involved there. There's workflow involved on once the person requests or signs to join the company and what has to happen after that. So you can imagine that, again, we talk about anywhere where content, people, and process come together. And HR is a great example where you've got a lot of content, a lot of people, and a ton of process.
Got it. Well, and that dovetails so nicely to what we said before, that any documents that you're generating out of Conga, you can manage with SpringCM. So terrific. A couple other questions, and it kind of comes around or really talks about documents themselves. Is there a spell check in SpringCM?
There is a spell check in SpringCM.
Okay, beautiful. Easy question. Thank you, Bonnie. And then here's another question about...
I was actually thinking about that question for a minute going, wait a minute, is that a trick question? There's also spell check when you're actually saving a document or saving a file. One of the other, and if I can just expand on that a little bit, when I talked about attributes earlier, one of the things that attributes can do is it can allow you as an administrator to actually name things, because oftentimes when you've got 100 people trying to do it, things go a bit awry. So it's one of the other great things that you can do with SpringCM as well.
Wonderful. And in that same vein, there's another question talking about editing those documents. So if you've got a document saved in File, can you edit that, make changes, and then send that on at that point to another recipient? I'm assuming yes, but...
The answer is yes, if you have the permission to do that. So we have a very, very granular security level within SpringCM that goes down to obviously the SpringCM user, the document, the folder. You may have the ability to do what we call one-click edit in certain documents, but maybe not in other documents. For example, archived versions of documents that are not to be modified. You may not have the ability, no one may have the ability to make edits to those documents, Chris.
Got it. So that's something, Ben, that can be set up at the Spring user level and then determined either by the user, by the document, by other profiles, roles, actions, those type of things.
Correct.
Okay, super. Great question. Thank you, Jerry, for that one. Help me a little bit about the automation. I know you mentioned that some of the attributes and some of those other, activities and actions that can happen. When you showed that preview screen, you saw the attributes and all the functions on the top of that screen. Is that something that can be automated, and how does that work, Ben?
It can. So I've used the phrase workflow quite a bit, and workflow means a lot of different things to different people. It's a term that's been around for a long time. So let me just explain what it means within SpringCM to help folks get their head around it. We use workflow to describe any activity that Spring does on behalf of a user or someone else, right? So that's the workflow is what helps to streamline and automate what typically are manual processes today. And we have 3 levels of workflow in the product. First are our smart rules. Smart rules can do things like assigning attributes, etc. If you've ever used and set up out-of-office assistant in Outlook, you have the ability to set up our smart rules. Second is a level of workflow that we've built around review, approval, and routing, right? Oftentimes documents simply need to start with one person, something happens, move to the next person, something happens, move to the next person, then done. So again, we have a workflow that you can very easily tailor for that kind of, go here, then there, then done. And then finally, we have our advanced workflow. And advanced workflow is what really allows you to automate some of the more complex processes that may involve, for example, routing a piece of content somewhere, but then pausing for something to happen, or based on what happens with that content, either continuing down the path or taking a deviation into another part of the process. And typically, in that kind of more complex workflow, Chris, and by the way, we've had people who have come to us and basically said, we had given up hope and didn't even think that there could be a way to automate our process because it's so complex, and we've been able to do it for them. And in that case, we've got a phenomenal customer success team led by my colleague, Jeff Piper, that just had a lot of great experience in content and business process around content. And we'll work with our customers to help them build that workflow. We can either do it for them, we can do it alongside with them, but basically work with them to get that established. And last comment on that, I grew up in the kind of old school enterprise software world where you paid $1 for the product and $10 to implement it, and it took, a year to get it up and running. Radically different model in the cloud and with SpringCM.
Super. That's terrific. And that really goes back to, as you were talking about, customers saying they want those users and folks to learn one system. So being able to automate those particular processes makes that, again, an even easier process for those folks.
You bet.
One other question. Just wanted to say, what's the best way to manage templates with Conga and SpringCM? And this is from Brooke, and I think from a standpoint of templates, really, Brooke, thinking of, those are going to be those documents that you would manage and store in Salesforce and with Conga, and then we would generate those through the Conga process, and the output of that document would then be what we'd hand off to SpringCM. But I guess maybe, from a template standpoint, that really is where the Salesforce data is going to be generated and merged into that. So think of it as those steps of, Composer is going to be able to take the information, generate maybe that version 1, Brooke, or that initial version of that document or set of documents, and then as that completed content goes through the Spring process, that it could be edited, changed, redlined, and that type of thing, but that the templates themselves would stay, at least if you're using Conga, in the Conga template manager in Salesforce as well. Super. Hope that answered your question. Ben, one other question. This whole group, and as you know, this is a Salesforce only group. Conga is a product that only works with Salesforce.com. Can you use SpringCM outside of Salesforce?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. You can. And again, if folks want to look at this in the archive that'll be posted on our respective sites, I had a diagram at the very beginning of the presentation that talked about the different ways to access SpringCM. So while, as you said, Conga is purpose-built for Salesforce, all the examples that we've given today have been around Salesforce, you can access and utilize SpringCM in ways outside of Salesforce. This can be great for folks in an organization, by the way, that may need to take part in a content process, but really don't need and don't want to use a Salesforce license. I always like to give the example of lawyers. Lawyers don't like working in Salesforce. However, if you probably doubled their hourly rate to $1,000 an hour, they would work in Salesforce. They want to be able to work in a Word document on their desktop, and we give them the ability to do that.
Super. That was exactly kind of I think the gist of that question was, regardless of how that document gets generated and how it gets managed in that Filet app, that there are many ways to access and manage that content.
You bet. You bet.
Super. Great. Well, Ben, that's all the questions that I have. Oh, here's a great question as well. Sorry, just popped up. Who should they contact, Ben, if they've got some specific questions that you've covered today? I can ask that or answer that from a Conga perspective. Certainly, you can reach out to us, via our customer success team at support@congamerge.com. You can reach out to me directly as well. But then, Ben, what's the best way for folks that have more specific SpringCM questions to contact you?
What I would invite the audience to do is to either follow me on Twitter, shoot me a direct message on Twitter, and I'll get back in touch with you. My Twitter ID is @BenKiker, BenKiker. The other option is to also just shoot a quick email to me, bkiker@springcm.com.
Okay. And I think that was on the beginning slide of the
Correct. It is.
Of the webinar, so it'll be up there on the archive as well. But always reach out. And for everyone on this webinar as well, you can always reach out to folks at Conga. We can put you in touch with folks at Spring as well. And as you know, the integration with SpringCM and Conga is very, very straightforward. Once you have the Spring CM pieces up and running in Salesforce, it would certainly be our pleasure to help you connect that to Conga and see how that works together. So that's something that we can certainly help with for our Composer customers. Great. I think that's it, Ben.
Hey, Chris, thanks very much, and thanks to the audience for some awesome questions. Appreciated the opportunity to spring it with you today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day and week.
Great. Thanks, Ben, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Bye-bye.